Listening to The Complete Entrepreneur. Today we are talking about time management, and we're doing it here on Startup Club. Startup Club is the largest club on Clubhouse. We have 840,000 members on Clubhouse, and we're aiming for 1 million members by the end of this year. We'd like to get 1 million members. I think I just pushed you to the audience there, Jeff. Can we maybe? Or hold on, maybe I'll make you a moderator. Ah, Amber, welcome as well. And Jeff, to get you back up on stage. Sorry about that, my friends. I literally meant to click make a moderator, but I clicked moved you to audience.
Sure,
Sorry
Colin.
about that, Jeff.
Sure.
All right. But see, I'm doing a good job. Oh my gosh. I'm doing a good job. I just did the same to Michelle. So Michelle.
And Colin, can you hear me?
Yes, I do. And I
Oh,
see
awesome.
you have your party hat.
We can see you perfectly.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
Well, I'm so excited about this show because this is what we all don't have enough of is time. Michelle?
Excellent. So we're so pleased today to be able to announce that over the next 3 weeks, we have Amber Hacker, that's actually her real last name, joining us while Michael Gilmore is traveling to the West from Australia. So Amber is an amazing person. She has an amazing amount of experience and wisdom that she's going to pass down to us over the next 3 weeks, and she's looking for lots of engagement here from the Startup.Club members. So Amber is the Vice President of Operation and Finance for Interfaith America, which is actually a nonprofit that specializes in helping companies and CEOs engage and be diverse. Also, Amber is a contributing writer to the Harvard Business Review, as well as to the Women's Daily magazine, where she talks about finance and cool things like time management. So, without further ado, Amber, the stage is yours, and we're dying to hear what you have to say. And to our members, we're going to quickly start bringing people up on the stage while Amber is talking. So, think of your questions or hacks that you can contribute, and we'll get you on stage at the appropriate time. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you to Colin and Olivia and Mimi and the entire startup team. I am so excited to be here. I love entrepreneurs. So I work for an organization, as Michelle mentioned, Interfaith America. We were actually started by an Ashoka entrepreneur, Ibu Patel. And I also happen to be married to an entrepreneur, someone who started his own business. And I wanted to start here today with a story. So I really wanted to start with a story to tell you why I decided to cultivate an expertise in time management. And it really starts with a story of failure. And it's example of example of we need what we teach. So this was about 10 or 12 years ago, and I was in charge of organizing a conference event at the White House. President Obama had just issued the President's Interfaith and Community Service Campus Challenge, which was really to encourage college and universities to get involved in interfaith work. So it was a particularly exciting moment for our organization because essentially the person with the biggest megaphone in the world is saying, hey, this work is really important. And so I was in charge of organizing a conference event to bring together people to cultivate skills of interfaith leadership and interfaith cooperation. And we had so many people interested in coming to this thing that we ended up having to do two of them back to back. So I'm in charge of it, and I'm sitting at my desk at, I remember this moment, I'm in Greek town, and I'm sitting at my desk, and I realized I'm looking at my inbox, and I have 4,000 emails in my inbox. And I just remember being so overwhelmed. And so I know many of us, with our Gmail inboxes, we may have thousands and thousands of emails, and some of those may be, marketing emails, or some of those may be promotional emails. But these were 4,000 actionable emails, things that I needed to respond to. And that was the moment that I realized I really needed some help in this area, that I really needed some support in how I could better manage my time in my professional life. So that really set off a journey to go and get my MBA, to study time management as part of my graduate work, and then ultimately develop and opportunities to help people and to help companies think about time management, because time is one of our most valuable resources and it's finite, right? Like we all have the same amount of time, no less, no more. And so, how do we use that most effectively in our personal and our professional life? So, I guess I would love to hear from some of the folks on stage. I know I'm not the only one who has had a 4,000 email inbox moment. So, I guess my first question is, what is your 4,000 inbox moment? So, I'd love to hear from folks on the stage. And then I would love to get into just some very practical hacks for entrepreneurs. So, given that many of you are wearing tons of different hats, you're working 2 or 3 jobs, what are some just very actionable and practical hacks that you can use as an entrepreneur in both your personal and professional lives? So, I'll turn it over maybe to you, Michelle, or you, Colin. Would love to hear what is your 4,000 email inbox moment? What is a moment where you realized, oh my gosh, I really need some more support or need some more resources and tools on managing my time?
Well, you want me to kick it off, Michelle? All right, I'll kick it off. It happened relatively early in my career as an entrepreneur. Graduated from college in 93, and my very first company, I had worked for something like 365 days, and then Christmas came around, and that was the first day I took off. Um, and I'd done everything myself, and I began to realize early on that the more that I could delegate, the more successful I could be. And so I began to do that, and that was probably like 23, 24 years old. So I guess that's the first hack I'm throwing out there is for me as an entrepreneur, as a startup, where possible, delegate everything. And when I talk about delegating everything, I mean everything. I've gotten to the point now where my house, I haven't seen or touched a bill for my house in years, 10, 15 years. I don't do it. I don't run that. I don't run the house. Um, and that's the way the businesses that I operate work as well. Is really I don't run them. I work with people who run them, and they're responsible for those tasks. So first one is delegate everything.
Okay, well, I think Amber, thanks for what you shared. I'll chime in because you asked more specifically about emails, and I've struggled with, the idea of inbox zero is as rare as a live unicorn, not the Silicon Valley unicorns, but a live unicorn, at least for me. So I've always tried to not get to inbox zero, but alternatively to try not to live in my inbox. And so several things have made that easier over time. More recently, Gmail and Outlook and most email clients will let you filter your emails into priority emails versus all the unsolicited emails. So that's step one, and really block out your time when you're going to focus on the priority emails and when you're going to focus on the rest of the junk. And also block out time in your calendar when you're going to manage your email versus when you're actually doing work that's not being dictated by your inbox. And I found that to be very helpful. And whether that's in 20-minute chunks, if you like the Pomodoro method, or if you just set aside an hour, and for this hour, I'm going to do email. And then the last hack I'll share is let people know those time frames, so you're not getting bugged by people expecting. So I've tried this. I haven't tried it recently, but a while back I tried it, where I actually put in my email signature that I'm only responding to emails during these hours. So, so people know when they send me an email not to expect an immediate response. Or even on these days, you can segregate, hey, I'm only doing email on Tuesdays or whatever. But I think blocking it out and setting aside specific times when you deal with email is one way to help.
Jeffrey, I love that. I think slaying the email monster is one of the biggest challenges of time management, and you just laid out some really excellent strategies. And those are something I'm going to build on and get into in a moment. And Colin, I think your point about delegating and really being strategic with your time is really insightful as well. Thank you so much to you both for sharing. Um, Michelle, do we want to hear from anyone else on the stage before, or love to hear from you
Sure.
before I jump into
Yeah.
the list?
Well, yeah, we're talking about time saving. So, yeah, one of my moments was, I'm just like a queen of lists. Like I like to think, I can do everything and make infinite amount of lists. One of the big aha moments for me is just really the power of saying no, which is really prioritizing. So if you've read Peter Drucker, you'll learn that it's that is the most powerful word probably in the dictionary, because it forces you to prioritize. And if you do that as a leader, you're setting also up your team for success. If you stay focused on what the goals are, then they will, and together you can succeed. So that's kind of my big aha moment, is not making too many priorities, and being able to say no and prioritize appropriately. Thank you.
Yeah, Michelle, I think that's so smart. And I mean, my line on this is we don't actually need to do more. We need to do more of what matters. And so, really, what you're speaking to is how are we actually identifying things that need to be a higher priority? And what are the things that get in the way that are perhaps externally driven that contribute to our incoming? And so I think that that's so smart, Michelle, because I mean, look, I have a lot of good hacks and best practices to share, and I do this work quite frequently. But if you're not doing them on the right things, all the time management strategies in the world won't help. You have to figure out your strategic priorities, and that's super important. I feel like we could do a whole clubhouse series just on that. So thank you so much for sharing that. Um, Anyone else on stage want to share any thoughts before I jump into a list of hacks to share?
I'd like to share something, Amber. My aha moment is more like in life in general. I had my own business for a while, and then I decided to change careers, and all these dreams that I had did not fit in the hours I had in one day. So I had to learn how to prioritize the things that needed to be done today. And the biggest lesson for me was being super self-aware of my most efficient hours of the day. So the most difficult tasks, I had to put in those hours that I knew that I could work as efficient as I needed to be able to do all these things that I wanted to do at the same time. So for me, it was the self-awareness and understanding my productivity hours and which hours I needed to take some like breaks because my brain wasn't focused.
Yeah, Olivia, I love that. And those insights remind me of a fairly famous article from Harvard Business Review. It's called Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time. And one thing I love about that article is it really talks about how knowing yourself and knowing when you have the most energy is key to managing your time, right? So, as you mentioned, really figuring out when you're going to do your kind of most weedy and your hardest tasks. I think that there's this sort of myth of the morning person, and certainly a lot of us get our most of our energy in the morning. I'm one of those people, right? So but there are some folks that get most of their energy at certain times in the afternoon or evening. And so the article is really about, first of all, identifying when do you have your most energy? Is that in the morning? Is that in the afternoons? What are the time periods? What are your sort of your own personal circadian rhythms? And then how can you identify the hardest and the weediest task that you may have on your plate? And that's when you should do that task, right? So I have I have what's called refill your stapler time, which is those are the kind of things where you have to do it. You have to do expense reports. You eventually have to refill your stapler. You got to charge your phone. But those kinds of things don't take a whole lot of brain power, right? So what I suggest with clients is really identifying when do you have your most energy. And Colin, I think maybe this is something you mentioned about blocking off times on your calendar. Maybe it was you, Jeffrey, but when do you have your most energy, your highest levels of energy, and then how can you strategically get the hardest, the most strategic, the most important, to your point, Michelle, work done during those time frames. So that's great. Thank you so much for sharing, Olivia. Um, so I would love to jump in to a couple of hacks that I have shared when I do trainings with organizations, with companies, with people, of things that folks have found sticky, to borrow a term from Chip and Dan Heath, and have found most useful. And then I would really love to draw on the expertise from this community. I think it would be really helpful and great. And some of you have already mentioned some really fabulous hacks. And I think one of the things that we're going to do coming out of this is we're going to compile a list of all of these to then share back out with the Clubhouse community. Michelle, is that right?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. We'll have recordings as well as a blog post written by Mimi up on the site for everyone to come back to. Also, if you want to get email news alerts, you can go to www.startup.club. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michelle. So, the first hack I would love to share with you all is actually about multitasking. And the hack is that multitasking is the enemy to getting things done. And I want to take a moment and define different kinds of multitasking, because this is something that I think is so pervasive, at least in my life and many people I know. So there's what's called backtasking, which is when we're doing two things at once, but one of those things does not take a lot of brain power. So, for example, if you are baking a loaf of bread and while you're doing that you're catching up with your mom on the phone, right? So that's called backtasking, and backtasking is fine. Multitasking is actually, I would define as switch tasking or task switching, which means you're actually constantly switching back and forth between something. And that's if, let's say, you're working on your email and then your phone pings and then you respond and text a friend. And so that's when you're kind of going back and forth. That could be while you're driving and texting. So it can be something that's dangerous, right? That's all something we all know that we're not supposed to do. But there's been a lot of research that shows that switch tasking or multitasking exhausts your brain. And in fact, it shows there's a lot of empirical data that shows you make more errors when you are switch tasking. There's also a lot of research that shows that it impedes your ability to encode short term memory. So there's a lot of different estimates on this, but it actually shows that it can rob time from your day. Because then when you're interrupted, you have to restart something. So I've seen a lot of different research on this, but it's pretty startling. So if you get interrupted, so if you're working on, you're writing something for work, or you're really focused, and then your phone pings, or you get a phone call, or you get a tap on your shoulder, or the Amazon guy pops by. Um, it shows that anywhere from 7 to 25 minutes is the amount of time it takes you to get back to what you were originally doing, that you have to restart. And so that's about a loss of about 84 minutes a day, because it leads to inefficiencies, momentum loss. You have to do things over. And that's about 45 days of productivity a year. So, switch tasking is really, really costly. This is the reason, if you work from home and you're constantly switch tasking between things, that at the end of the day, if you feel exhausted, that's the reason why. Some of you may think, oh, I'm actually really good at multitasking. And that may be true. There's some really great activities out there that you can do that actually test this out, right? So there's a guy named Dave Crenshaw who wrote a book on multitasking or switch tasking, and he has an exercise that you can do that actually tests you and see if you can really multitask effectively and efficiently. And whenever I've done that exercise with people and companies and different organizations, almost no one is able to really do it efficiently. So that I always start with that because I think that there's a myth of the multitasker out there. It's my personal pet peeve whenever I see multitasking on job descriptions, because I think you actually don't want your employees to multitask. I think what you want them to do is really concentrate on one thing at a time, because interruptions can be so costly. And so
But
what I
isn't
do with a lot of my clients,
Amber?
yeah,
Aren't startups by nature like chaos? And because of that, as entrepreneurs, we have to multitask or switch task. I mean, it's just every day seems to be almost like chaos to me when it comes to a startup.
I think that's true. I think that's true. So I think what I am saying is, it's certainly a fact of life, but if you do it constantly and all the time, it's going to be really inefficient, and it's going to impede your ability to get things done and get things done at a high level. So what I would say to that, Colin, is, and this kind of this is such a great lead into my next hack, which is around deep work. So I have read probably upwards of about 45, 50 books on time management. You know, I mentioned at the beginning of this, I study this as part of my MBA program. I work with organizations on this. Out of all the books on time management, the one that I would tell you to read is called Deep Work by Cal Newport. And it's a really excellent book. About the first half of the book talks about the importance of deep work. And so Newport is a professor at Georgetown University, and he defines deep work as essentially making substantive progress against larger strategic goals. So think, writing a strategic plan or putting together a business plan for your organization. So the stuff that's higher level and big picture. And so he talks about how in the knowledge economy, the deep work is becoming more and more valuable, yet it's becoming more and more rare. And so, Colin, what I would say to you is that yes, like it's a fast-paced environment being an entrepreneur, and you do have, switch tasking is probably kind of the normal pace of life. And at the same time, what I really encourage clients to do is to embrace deep work. So the book is really excellent. The book, again, the first half sort of makes the case, and the second half is very practically focused. It tells you how to do it. But what I would say is that if you can carve out time for deep work in your schedule, it can make a huge and enormous impact. It's made a huge and enormous impact on my life. And so essentially what deep work is taking at least a couple hours out of your week for quiet time, no meetings, no interruptions. Back to the point that Olivia made at the beginning, preferably at a time where you have the most amount of energy, right? And so I would say that's when I think you can really make progress against the important stuff. Instead of, which I think a lot of times when we switch tasks, we are letting externally driven things drive our time. I would say if you don't have a plan for your time, someone else has a plan for your time, right? So I think that deep work really can be a superpower. It's something that I try to do at least once a week and try to really protect that time because it really bears fruit. So I think that deep work is, out of all the books I've read on time management, this is the one that has been the most prolific and has had the most impact on my life. Michelle, I would love to go to a next hack and then maybe open it up to the group to hear other other ideas that folks have.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We have members on the stage ready to ask. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, great. Okay, so I'll do one more hack and then would love to open it up to folks. So Jeffrey, you brought up some great tips on email, and email is can be that's the number one complaint that I hear from folks that I work with. It's meetings and emails that can really take up a huge amount of time. So, how can we get better at email? Jeffrey gave some really great examples. Jeffrey, you said the zero inbox is the unicorn. Zero inbox is something that I try to work towards, and I use David Allen wrote a book called Getting Things Done, which was really kind of the gold standard of time management. I think he wrote the book back in the 80s and the 90s. He re-released it in 2015 because the original book talks about like paper files and VHS tapes, which I don't know about y'all, but none of us really use anymore. And so, but the book is great. But he really embraces the zero inbox method, and that's something that I also try to work towards. But also totally agree with you, Jeffrey, that sometimes it's just really not possible. So one email hack that I share with folks to again slay the email monster is email batching. And where I originally read about this, it came from Tim Ferriss, who wrote a great book called The 4 Hour Work Week. Colin, he also in that book talks a lot about delegating, which is something you mentioned at the beginning. And email batching, the idea is a lot of research shows that most of us check our email up to 72 times a day. That's the figure that I read just a couple weeks ago. We check it 72 times a day. That is a lot. And so instead of checking it 72 times a day and then kind of quickly responding on one off things, what I suggest to my clients is to batch your emails. So, what does that mean? So, that essentially means that you pick 2 or 3 times in the day where you are going to look through your emails and respond to them. And it's much more efficient to do that in chunks of time instead of just doing a very quick one off, well, let me respond to this and let me respond to this. And so it's a much more efficient use of your time. And Jeffrey, I think you even mentioned this that sometimes folks have in their auto response, I may be slow to getting back to you because I'm not available on email right now. And I've seen those kinds of things. I think there's some great suggestions and ideas there. But what I really suggest to clients is pick a couple of times in the day, 2 to 3 times in the day, where you're going to sit down and respond to email because email is not going away. Actually, interestingly enough, Cal Newport wrote a book. Cal Newport, the same guy that wrote Deep Work that I really like, he wrote a book called A World Without Email. So that's next on my list. So I'm very interested to find out his case for eliminating email. But in the meantime, email is a necessary evil. It's here to stay. So a way that I think you can become much more powerful with your inbox and much more efficient with your time and get time back is to really focus on email during a couple of key points in the day, but don't leave it up on your computer. And I realize this is hard. And there may be some times where you do have to leave it up where things are really busy, or maybe you're planning a big event or there's something going on and you need to be immediately available. And certainly those times happen. But if you are able to implement email batching, that can be a really effective technique to help slay the email monster. So I have some more hacks to share, but I want to pause there just because this community is so incredibly diverse and rich, and I would love to hear both hacks that people have that they would like to add as entrepreneurs. You all are experts at this, and then two, what questions you have for me as you think about how to effectively manage your time.
Great. Thanks for those hacks. So, Beverly, welcome back to the stage. What is your hack or your question that you'd like to share, please?
Hi, Michelle. Glad to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me up. Always enjoy the startup rooms. I came kind of late, but I've enjoyed what I've heard so far. One of the things that kind of came to my mind as a hack was when Amber and Colin were kind of going back and forth on the chaos, of like the startup. I work in finance and I help CEOs kind of get their finances in order and all. And I work with some startups who are looking for funding. And of course, the investors want to see their numbers, want to see their financials and their reports and things. So I work with them a lot on getting that together. And it like Colin was saying, it's always something going on. It's always chaos at these startups. And Finance seems to always be at the bottom. And one thing that I found that helps is for them to work. And even with myself, I had to do this. It was a hack I had with myself, always being busy and getting nothing done. So one of the things I do when I come in working with them is tell them, it's kind of like also what Amber was talking about with the time blocking. This needs to be done. This needs to be done today. We need to set aside time, not just to start it or to look at it or to get a feel for it, but to start it and complete it. I think it's important when you go set a task, you also need to set the completion for that task, or it will go on and on and on and on. So if it's something that I feel can take a day, I'm going to make sure it takes a day. If it's going to take more than a day, then I set a day and maybe another day. Whatever time you think, but set that time and then have a deadline. I think that's the most important thing. Is if you're going to start a task, have an end time for that task as well. And also with the emails, I just wanted to throw in one thing that helped me a lot. I found I do a lot of virtual work. So to cut down on the back and forth with, oh, I forgot to ask him this, I didn't get this, I didn't get that. Before I send an email, I take notes. What do I need to know? What is everything I need to know? Get as much information out of this email as I can. And that cut down way back on. I just hit send. A half hour later, I remember, oh, I should have asked him this. Oh, I should have done this. Oh, I should have got that. Oh, I meant to attach this. I make notes. I go through my notes. What did I forget? I take like a day or two and then I do the email. And sometimes it's a long email, but when I get the response, I've gotten everything that I need. I can work, I can get stuff done. And when I get back to them, it's on to the next stage. It's not still collecting stuff off of that first email. So that's just some of the little things that I do that I thought might help. Thank you.
Beverly, I love that. Oh, there's so much good stuff in what you just said. First of all, what you said about always being busy but not getting stuff done. I felt that, and my clients have felt that. And that actually reminded me of in Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, he talks about deep work and shallow work. So the idea of shallow work is that we're always feeling busy. We're responding to that email. We're on social media. We're doing this thing, but we're not actually really making progress towards the really important stuff, the things that you just mentioned, Beverly. And the making sure that deadlines are clear. I mean, that's absolutely crucial and critical. Your comments about email actually reminded me of another email hack that I've shared with some clients recently. I have been voice dictating my emails, and I'm a pretty fast typist. But this has been an absolute game changer. And so it reminded me of what you said, Beverly, about, really looking through and taking notes. And that's actually been something that I do as well. But the voice dictating my emails is something that has just saved me an enormous amount of time. Now, I will say my big caveat to that hack is that when you voice dictate, you're really going to have to go back and edit, because as you all know, if you've ever used voice dictation, I use it on my iPhone. They screw it up. There are some things they screw up. So, you have to sort of weigh it with the pros and cons, but that is something that I found has saved me a huge amount of time. Thank you so much, Beverly. Such great comments.
All right, very good. So next on the stage, we have Tashiana. Are you there? There she
Yeah.
is.
Hi, thank you for bringing me up. Um, so Beverly, I'm going to be reaching out to you shortly. Just letting you know. And I wanted to just share that I know that a lot of us may currently rely on Google Calendar, but what really helps me is just a typical regular planner and write down three priorities that I have for that day. It really helps me focus on what I need to get done and get that satisfaction of like crossing something off versus being in like a project management tool and then just clicking it and that's it. So I kind of I actually do genuinely enjoy the paper and pen sort of thing, and have found that that's been helping me out more recently. I used to do it more in college, stopped doing it, got back on it because I'm really trying to work on the whole time management thing. Thanks again for all your advice so far. Looking forward to hearing more.
Um, Tatiana, I love what you said. And so I'll maybe just add two quick things. One, you said that analog really helps you. I'm the same way. So there's a lot of different time management systems out there, and we could have a whole clubhouse on that. But I use Ryder Carroll's bullet journaling method, and he wrote a book called Bullet Journaling, and he talks in that book about how when you do something analog, when you actually put pen to paper, that it helps your brain remember things much better. And so there's a lot of science behind actually putting pen to paper can be a lot more effective. And that's not to say that digital tools aren't effective; they are, but it kind of can depend on the person. The other thing that you said, Tatiana, just I thought was so smart, which is you're thinking about your top three priorities as you start the day. There's a book that if you go to any airport in America, you know how they have the Hudson booksellers. I always see this book. It's got a white cover. It's called The One Thing. The surprisingly simple truth behind extraordinary results is by a guy named Gary Keller. I'm going to save y'all $12.99 right now. You don't need to buy that book. Here's the one thing. Here is the one thing. The question that he encourages people to ask themselves to identify those priorities that Tatiana was just talking about is, what's the one thing I can do such by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And so, Tatiana, I think what you said is brilliant. And that's the question that I would encourage you and encourage others to really think about as you're starting your day. And this is a practice that I try to hold myself to, is I start the day and I ask myself the question, I'll repeat it: what's the one thing I can do such by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And so that's been something that's really helped me identify what's really the one thing. This gets back to Michelle, something that you said at the beginning as we were thinking about what's actually really strategic, right? And so that's something that I borrowed from that book, that's been really helpful to me in my practice and also to folks that I work with.
Excellent. So next we have Dr. Claudine. Dr. Claudine, what is your suggestion or question for our members here?
Thank you, thank you. I'm loving this conversation because entrepreneur, it's not easy. We work with different people. We have many projects to accomplish. We have our own new ideas we come up with all the time. My suggestion would be, since we work with different people, and then people have a, hi, how are you? And people have different ways of the operation or way of doing things. And then remember, we are people. Your own integrity, the way you honor your promise, know that is not the same way somebody you will collaborate with will honor their own promise. So when you are working with other people, this is what I notice in my work, because I work with different freelance to create posters, flyers. I use most of the time Facebook for my business and the charitable organization. And then also I collaborate with other authors. We are writing a book in a collaboration. So I notice that when we are talking about what we're going to do, we say we're going to do this by this time, but sometimes they don't finish the work on the time they promise they're going to do. And then if they're supposed to finish the work today, they skip 2-3 days. And then the moment they delay to work, at the moment they finish, they want you to pay them immediately. They don't even think where you are, what you are doing. They don't consider the fact that they didn't honor their promise. They just want you to immediately to do what they want you to do. So I noticed that if you are this kind of person who have a beautiful heart, you care for the people, you have to care for your mental capacity, mental protection, because if you are working with different people, everybody wants something now, despite the fact they don't honor their promise, they are on delay. So it will make you jump all the time out of what you are doing and then go to take care of the businesses, which may affect your well-being. So that's what I wanted to share. So it's good to set up your standard, tell people if you don't give this work by this time. I understand the life can happen, but please do not accept it for me to pay you by this time, or 3 days maximum, minimum 3 days to 1 day. But if you go beyond 3 days, you will wait for me next week. So that time you can have your own way of continuing doing your work. Other than that, you will be in soccer. Thank you very much. I love this conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Claudine. I'm so appreciative of your comments. I think a lot of what you are speaking to is about, accommodating different work styles, but also really managing expectations up front, which is so important because we can all be really good individually at getting things done. But as we're thinking about working with folks around us, that's super important. So thank you for sharing that.
Hey, it made me think of something, Dr. Claudine. I love what you said, because that's just like a problem for small to large companies. I think even in our personal lives, right? Like there's always folks, and I'm going to be honest, I'm one of those people that sometimes do that to others. And one thing that I've tried to learn, and I try to do more of with my team, is I try not to do what I would call create an artificial emergency. Like when I'm in that seat, right, because I'm just trying to get my, projects done or move the team along, because I have a team, I like to try to stop and think, okay, am I making up an artificial deadline in my head? Am I creating emergency at the expense of not only projects but people? So I think your comments there are really valuable.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for having me on the stage. Yes, especially, we are in America, but according to different states where people live, we have a different time zone. And then also, if you work with people outside of America, they have a different time zone. They may send you the work, delay the time you are waking up, and then they want you to do everything before you even set up your day. And then there's no way you can tell them that I just wake up, I'm doing some stuff. You guys are supposed to send me this yesterday, and then they were like, it's like it can create a conflict or misunderstanding for no reason. Yeah, so raise your standard and then stick to it, because you need your mindset as an entrepreneur. You need your well-being, your amazing thinking to be able to create what you need to create and achieve your high level of excellence. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me here. Ambet, you're amazing.
Excellent. This is a really amazing conversation. I just want to remind everyone that Amber will be here 3 consecutive weeks, while Michael Gilmore travels to the West from Australia. If you want to get email alerts about this show or the Serial Entrepreneur or other notable authors and speakers that come up, please go to www.startup.club and join our email list. We only send emails out about once a week, and we promise we do not spam. So I want to get to Adam, and then we have a couple of questions actually in the chat that we can ask Amber for you. So, Adam, you've been so patient. Please tell us your hack, and what are your questions? Thank you.
Hey. Hello, everybody. Hello, Jeffrey. It's nice to be up here with you again. And
Good to
hello to
see you, Adam.
everyone. Good to see you, man. First of all, I'm the founder and CEO of the WTK of, get this, the first organic agency ever for viral content on TikTok. And this isn't like a time saving hack. This is more of a, like, a time efficient hack, because I feel like the most, this is like the best piece of advice I can give ever, is like, I feel like most people are really eaten, like they have their time eaten by their actual phones, where basically, like, let's say for lunch, instead of, you're eating, you take like an extra 10 minutes, just because you were eating and looking at your phone and stuff like that. So I feel like if you created a separate, like an alt account, and manipulating the algorithm, which means just going and following the different accounts for the things that you want to learn, that would be a great use of your time, instead of just like looking at your phone for 20 minutes, 30 minutes straight without, learning anything, just looking at other people and stuff like that. So I think that's like amazing advice for the people that really feel like they're being consumed by their phones, and the creativity is just, you know but that's my contribution for tonight.
Adam, I love that. And I am constantly convicted by screen time personally. And I love that there are, tech solutions that can really help with this. So there are a number of these out there. You can put limits on your phone in terms of the amount of time that you spend on certain apps. And, there's more and more of this kind of stuff out there. But I think that is such an important point because I don't know if any of you do the screen time report, but that can be pretty interesting. You get your screen time report at the end of the week and you see, oh my gosh, I've spent 4 hours a day on my phone, right? Like, what else could I be doing with those 4 hours? And so that is such an incredibly important point. We could also do a whole show about that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Michelle, I would love to. There's some good questions in the chat. Are you okay if I turn to one of these?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. So I want to take a question from Anna. So Anna says, Amber, what are some tips to avoid procrastination? It's so tempted to procrastinate certain items on your to-do list. What are some ways to combat this? Oh my gosh. Okay, such a great question. Thank you, Anna. So I would say a way to combat procrastination is to have a next action bias. And so this is one particular hack that I see in a lot of time management literature. I believe it kind of the next action bias language comes from David Allen's Getting Things Done, his book on time management. And when I work with clients, when folks typically procrastinate, there's a lot of reasons people procrastinate, but one of the main reasons that I see folks procrastinate is they actually don't have their next action properly identified. So let me give you an example, and I got permission from him to do so. A friend of mine named Adam. I was working with Adam to help him with his own time management because he was really struggling. And there was one thing that Adam needed to do on his list, and he said, "I just really have not been able to get this thing done." And the item was that he needed to send out a mass email to a particular listserv. And so that's what was on his list. And so I said to Adam, I said, "Do you have all the tools and resources you need to do that?" And he said, "No, actually, I need to figure out how to, get the list that I need in Salesforce." And I said again, "Well, Adam, do you have all the tools and resources that you need to do that?" And he said, "Well, actually, no, I don't know how to pull that list. I'm probably going to have to go talk to Rachel and get her input on how to actually pull the particular list that I need in Salesforce." So you get the idea. I asked him this question: "Do you have all the tools and resources that you need to do this thing that's on your list that you have been procrastinating?" And I asked him that question probably about 4 or 5 times until we actually nailed down what the proper next action for him was. And so I think that having a next action bias, what is the most immediate next action that you need to do? And really identifying it, right? So it can't be something that's super broad, right? It needs to be specific and it needs to be obviously actionable, right? And so that's the question. Do you have all the tools and resources you need to do this that you can really use to pressure test to see if what you think is the next action really is the next action? And you would be surprised. I work with a lot of folks that have things on their to-do list that aren't actually next actions. And so we kind of have to go through that several times and dig in a couple layers until we really pinpoint what is the thing that they need to do. Such a great question. Thank you, Anna.
Amber, and if I may add, also sometimes we are attaching certain emotions to procrastination that we're not aware of. And maybe the task that we need to get done gives us brings some anxiety or frustration. And it could be a million things. It could be For example, fear of rejection or criticism, not knowing how to do what we're asked to do, or some motivation or lack of motivation. So finding that emotion behind the procrastination is also super important to understand what is basically causing us to not do the work or delay the task.
Yeah, Olivia, I think that's 100% right. That's definitely the reason. The other reason number one that folks will avoid things on their list is there's certain emotion tied to certain things. So how can you really be in the headspace to one, name that and recognize that as you did, and then really figure out how do I tackle this thing? I realize there's a lot of stuff and baggage attached to this, but this is something that I really need to do. How can I go about it? That's a great point as well.
Amber, I was just curious if I could build on my delegate everywhere as much as possible.
Please. And Colin, if you have a particular example for entrepreneurs, I think that would be very, very useful.
All right, I'll do it quick. All right, so building on that, the other thing that I learned in my career was something called delegate responsibilities, not tasks. And I'll tell you this, because we spend on these entrepreneurs, startups, we spend a lot of time worrying about things. And I don't think there's anybody in the audience here who hasn't been up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And if you're the one responsible for every area of a startup, then it can be exhausting. And even those times that you're down, you're still worrying or you're still conscious of these issues. And the example I give is my wife and I run a school in Fort Lauderdale. She runs a school. And I've often told her this concept of delegate responsibilities and tasks. And she does work very hard. She works 10 hours, 12 hours a day, especially during the school year. And she works so hard. And they put together a really nice school. But truly, she's the one, the buck stops with her, and everything goes through her. And she's so stressed out. So early on in my career, I learned that if we can find a way to delegate responsibilities, not only are you going to save time and be less stressed, but you're also going to help scale your business. You're going to help scale that startup. And that's the last piece that I'll leave with you here today. Delegate responsibilities, not tasks.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's such sound wisdom. Thank you so much, Colin. I do want to get to another question that's in the chat that I believe is from Elizabeth Smith. She asked, Amber, what voice dictation do you use for emails? So that is a great question. So what I do is, so I have an iPhone, and when I open a new text or open a new email, in the bottom right hand corner, there's a little tiny microphone, and that's what I use. And so I actually don't really use Siri. I know a lot of people do and like it. I just haven't really gotten into using Siri. But so I just use the voice dictation that comes with my iPhone on my text messages and then on my email messages. And then often what I will do is I will voice dictate emails. I will even voice dictate things that I have to write. So, as Michelle mentioned at the beginning of this, I have contributed. I've written things for various platforms, and oftentimes I'm at least someone who finds that sometimes it's easier for me to actually just start talking and writing something that way rather than actually trying to type it, because then I find myself self-editing rather than just kind of getting into the flow. And that's kind of a personal preference thing. But actually, that was how I wrote an article for the Harvard Business Review. As I actually voice dictated it because I found it just easier to do that. And so, again, the caveat there is that you really have to go back and you have to edit, because voice dictation, it makes the funniest errors. I'm sure there's like 100 different memes on this out there. But that's what I utilize, and I find it to be really, really helpful. So what I'll do is I'll voice dictate, something and I'll email it to myself. And then when I'm at my computer, I'll copy paste it, and then I'll really clean it up and make it look nice and put it in a nice font, and I'll, get the formatting and all that kind of stuff. But then the content's already there. So it just makes it so much faster. That's a great question. Thank you.
That's some excellent advice, and I'm going to be really excited to see the blog posts. I think we'll have that live in a few days on our website, which is startup.club. Um, we're getting near the hour. So I thought it might be fun just to, go around the room just to make sure that we got everyone's hacks. So if you could just quickly say in 30 seconds or less anything else that's coming to mind, even if it's a single word. And we'll start with you, Jeff.
Single word, I would have to say focus.
Oh my gosh,
Hey
you took
Jeff,
my
what do you
word.
think about remarkable, Jeff? I mean, if you're not a fast typer, you can write out the notes on this, and it captures all your written notes, and you can
Yeah.
email them, you can OCR them. Is that in a
Yeah,
way a
I mean,
time hack?
it's definitely an organizational hack. I'm not sure if it's a time hack, but what's nice is things that you can do, like on my Remarkable, and what Colin is talking about. If you're not familiar, it's a digital notebook. So it looks like a tablet, but it only does one thing. It doesn't connect to the internet to browse or do email or anything else. It's literally you write on it, but you can save everything to the cloud. You can do OCR, so it can turn your handwriting into printed text, etc. But it's like a notebook that's virtually has infinite pages, and you can organize it in different ways in folders. So I do use my Remarkable all the time, and every morning I actually start my morning by writing down on that date's page in a calendar on the Remarkable the top three things I want to get done that day, or the top three priorities for that day, and I'll refer to it throughout the day. But you can do that on a piece of paper, on a sticky note, on numerous online things. So it's not the tool, it's the way you organize yourself.
All right, excellent. All right, let's go to Dr. Claudine. What is your one word or kind of fast point? Okay, she might not be.
Pla-
Yeah.
I would say, thank you, Michelle. I would say plan your day. Plan your day. Just do what you need to do because, like the question I saw about procrastination, sometimes people procrastinate because they want to be perfect, and then perfectionism make people put what they're supposed to do today for tomorrow, and then tomorrow never come. Just do it.
Um, I'm sorry, I have to jump in. I love that, Dr. Claudine, and I would say the quote that makes me think of is "Perfect is the enemy of the good,"
There you
and that is
go. Yes.
and that's so true. What you're speaking to, so perfect is the enemy of the good. If we seek perfection, it can be the enemy of the good.
Excellent. All right, so let's go to Beverly.
The one thing that comes to mind is a little bit of an extension off of Jeffrey's word focus is present, to be present. That's something I dealt with. Whether you're doing a task big or small, fast or with a lot of time, just be present, be conscious of it, and be very involved in that task. Um, I guess it's a little stem off of the anti-multitasking also, because sometimes when you're doing something, if you aren't really present and, as Jeffrey said, focused on it, it kind of can turn into where you've haphazardly done it. And sometimes I look back at some of the work I've done, and I'm like, wow, I could have done so much better with that. And I clearly knew it was because I just wasn't very present in the moment. I wasn't really focused in the detail of what I was doing. So I would say a combination of being focused and being very present in the task that you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing. One of my sayings, and maybe other people say it as well, is just being present is 80% of getting it done, of success. A lot of people, like it's analysis paralysis. But what I've found in my career and just observing other people, if you're present, if you're reliable, the majority of the time, you will be successful and you will get the job done. Okay. Tatiana.
Mine was intentional, which kind of goes back to what Beverly said. But if so, I actually was gonna. This kind of is coupled with Another tip that I actually have some random alarms set up throughout the week. And so it'll go off on like my Apple Watch. And I know just given the odd hour and the alarm, that it's my intentional alarm. And basically, it's just like a friendly reminder of like, hey, like, what are you doing right now? Can you be more intentional in this very moment with what you're doing? Are you eating? Like, are you chewing your food correctly? Or, are you working on something? Are you actually focused on that task? So, yeah, my word is in intention.
Fantastic. All right,
I
Olivia.
have one, Michelle. Yes.
Yes, go,
I want to
Olivia.
go back to Colin's delegating stuff. I would say 3 words: trust your team.
Excellent. So I think of military sayings a lot for some reason. I'm not sure why. But one of them is you expect, but you inspect. So you set your team up, and then of course you inspect, and then they'll rise to the occasion. Thank you. All right. I think we've come to the top of the hour. Wow, we're ending perfectly at 6. Amber, over to you. And everyone, just remember, please, that Amber will be here for the next 3 weeks. And she's all about helping the members, navigate, the complete entrepreneur life, the holistic meaning of what that means. What is the life balance? How can you be successful? Because we all do want to be successful. So, Amber, over to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Oh my gosh, what a great conversation. Thank you so much for everyone for being part of it. As Michelle said, the conversation is going to continue. So we would love to hear from you. If there's something that we touched on briefly here that you feel like, wow, that would actually be great if we could talk about that more, if we could explore that more, or get some more tips and tools and resources on that, reach out, let us know, because we want this conversation to benefit you, the entrepreneur. And as I said at the very beginning of our talk, time is one of the most important and precious resources that we have. And so if we think about, the idea of compound interest, if we think about that with our time, if you adopt just one of the things that we talked about today, that one of our panelists mentioned, one of our speakers mentioned, something that I mentioned, anything, that can have a huge overall impact on you, on your business, on your organizations. And so I just really encourage folks to, I'll leave you with homework, which is what's one hack that you heard today that you would implement. And then the extra credit is, if there's something that we talked about today that you want us to dive into more, let us know, because we would love to hear your feedback and really shape these sessions to be helpful, and practical and beneficial to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Michelle, but I'm following Amber now. I just clicked on her profile. I'm following her. She's amazing. What a first great show, Amber. Really, really, really appreciate it. I know the community, the Startup Club community, appreciates it as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the members for attending today. We really appreciate your time. If you have questions or you want to make suggestions, just send us an email at hello@startup.club. This has been a presentation of the Startup Club Network, and we're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow for a talk that Colin leads, which is called The Serial Entrepreneur. And then again, next Thursday, Amber will be here with more of her time saving and lifestyle, just wisdom and hacks. So thank you, everyone. Be well and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and welcome, Hamburg, to the clubhouse. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.